We're going to explain how to execute a query in Microsoft Access. There are several ways to do this depending on what you want to achieve. 1. Running a select query. This is the most common type of query used to retrieve data. To run a select query, open your Access database and navigate to the Queries tab. Double-click the query you want to execute. Access will then display the results in a datasheet view. You can also right-click the query in the navigation pane and select Run. Alternatively, you can press F5 on your keyboard while the query is open in Design View or SQL View. The results will show up in a new window, displaying the data that matches the criteria specified in your query. You can then export these results to other formats, like Excel or a text file, by going to the External Data tab and selecting the appropriate export option. 2. Running an action query. Append, update, delete. Action queries modify data in your database. These are different from select queries because they don't just display data, they change it. An append query adds records to a table, an update query changes existing data, and a delete query removes records. To run an action query, the process is similar to running a select query. You open the query in Design View or SQL View and then run it, usually through the F5 key or by right-clicking and selecting Run. However, before running an action query, carefully review the SQL code to ensure you're making the intended changes. Access will often prompt you to confirm the action, providing a safeguard against accidental data loss. Always back up your database before running action queries that could make significant changes. 3. Running queries from VBA code. If you're working with Access VBA, Visual Basic for Applications, you can execute queries programmatically. This is useful for automating tasks or incorporating queries into more complex applications. You'd use the docmd.runSQL method, passing the SQL statement of your query as a string argument. For example, docmd.runSQL select from myTable would run a select query on the table named myTable. Remember to handle potential errors within your VBA code using error handling mechanisms. This approach allows more complex interaction with your database, such as conditional execution of queries based on user input or other application events. 4. Parameters and queries. Some queries use parameters to allow users to specify criteria at runtime. When you run a parameterized query, Access will prompt you to enter values for the parameters before executing the query. This makes the query more flexible and reusable, as you don't need to modify the query itself every time you want to search for different data. This dynamic input ensures that the query retrieves exactly the information the user is looking for without requiring manual changes to the query's SQL structure. The parameter prompts will typically guide you through the required input, depending on the data type specified for the parameter in your query design. By understanding these methods, you can effectively use queries to retrieve, modify, and manage data within your Access database. Remember to always back up your data before making significant changes.